Okay, let's look at the Landon problem. And keep in mind, everything in blue, if we do this the way I like you to, everything in blue will be slope or change, and everything in red will be y-intercept or initial amount. Okay? So Landon started with 2 soccer practices, and he will have 4 additional practices every week. Okay, first thing I would do is fill out the data table and the graph. Okay, if Landon started with 2 soccer practices, that means at week 2, he's had 2. At week 0, he's had 2. Okay, and after week 0, with the 2 practices, he has 4 more every week. So a week goes by, we're going to add 4 to that, so that's 6. Another week goes by, we're going to add 4 to 6 and get 10. Another week goes by, we're going to add 4 to that and get 14. And then 18. Okay, so we have the data table. Okay, we're going to put the same points on the graph. So at week 0, he started with 2 practices. Okay, after 1 week, he has 6 practices total. Okay, after 2 weeks, put your point up at 10. 10 total practices. After 3 weeks, he has 12. No, I'm sorry, 14. 14. And after 4 weeks, he has a total of 18. Okay, so there's my points. I'm going to go ahead and click the line, draw line feature. I like to see a line there. Okay, so I have my data table, I have my graph. My line's a little high, but that's okay. Okay, let's do everything in this problem that has to do with slope. Let's do everything slope first. Okay, so in the sentence, I want you to use the middle rectangles to highlight. In the sentence, the part of the sentence that has to do with slope, change, would be that he has 4 additional practices every week. Okay, there's slope of my sentence. Slope of my data table is dragging these 2 little arrows to show change in y over change in x. Okay, so the slope of a data table is change in y values over change in x values. So as you go down this table, specifically from 10 to 14 is what we're kind of pointing out with the arrows. To get from 10 practices to 14 practices, we're increasing by 4 practices. So that's the change in y. From 2 weeks to 3 weeks, we're increasing by 1 week. So that's the change in x. So the change in y over change in x would be 4 practices over 1 week. Okay, take 4 divided by 1, which is 4. And just put a slash between your labels. So the slope is 4 practices every week. Okay, look, it's the same thing we highlighted in the sentence. He has 4 additional practices every week. Okay, the slope of a graph. Drag your rise and run bars down to show that the slope of a graph is rise over run. Okay, between any 2 points, doesn't matter which 2. Just think about rise over run. We're going to rise 4 practices because we're going from 6 to 10. We're going to run 1 week. So the rise over the run would be 4 practices for the rise, 1 week for the run. So 4 divided by 1 is 4 again. Notice we get the same thing as we did on the data table. 4 divided by 1 is 4. Slash, or the word per between the labels. 4 practices per week. Okay, so that's the slope. Everything we're doing now is slope change. Last thing we're going to do is know that the slope goes in front of the x in the equation. Okay, so everything we have is blue, slope. Okay, now we're going to go through the problem and show everything that's the y-intercept, which means initial amount. Okay, the big bars are for the sentence. The part of the sentence that has to do with initial amount is that he started with 2 practices. Okay, the part of the data table that has anything to do with initial amount of practices would be the number across from 0 weeks. See, at 0 weeks, he started with 2 practices. I'm going to type 2 down there where it says y-intercept. Okay, the y-intercept of the graph or initial value would be showing that he started with at 0 weeks, he has 2 practices, which is where the line is crossing the y-axis. Okay, that's why we say it's the y-intercept. It's where the line crosses the y-axis. Okay, this is the y-axis. And we're going to type in y-intercept as 2 at the bottom. Okay, last thing we do is know that the y-intercept in the equation always goes at the end. Okay, so we type that in. Okay, so everything on this slide that's blue is slope change. Everything on the slide that is y-intercept or initial amount is red. Okay, I want you to get really used to knowing how all of these ideas work between graphs, data, and sentences. Okay, let me know if you have any questions with this.